Well, we have a difficult half an hour. Now, let me use this metaphor from the first panel.
I'd like to make use of the image, the association which Professor Kettel used in our first session, speaking about the future like in a river, moving in the river. And if you shall add the expression of von Clausewitz, fog of the war, then we are moving along the river in the fog and sometimes even don't see the banks of this river. So what we have a stream and we have idea that we are moving ahead. So at the moment it's very difficult to speak of the future, of course. But currently we would like to speak a little bit about how actually, despite of all this fact, to see and to understand certain futures. We have two speakers, one of them is still not online, but hopefully she will join. And the first who will speak, and I'd like to introduce you with a special pleasure because probably there are a lot of graduates of MIM and friends of MIM, and you know that MIM has, let's say, the rich uncle in Switzerland. It's called IMD. And Professor Siemens is a professor in IMD, Institute for Management Development, and it's a great pleasure to invite him to talk about how to a little bit to understand and to see this nearest, at least, future. What we do know, using the same pattern, we know that there's a stream. And this is very clear what the stream is about and where it can bring us. And therefore, it is very interesting to learn how businesses can use this understanding with all this foggy situation, using understanding to build their strategy, using one of the streams, which is called digital and everything related to digital.
Thank you.
Your floor.
So this is going to be a little bit different than what you've seen before. This is essentially an elevator pitch to invite you to cooperate with us, with MIM Business School in terms of digital transformation. So what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about the research we've done, the results of that, some of the very basic things we think we've found that are useful for business, some examples that you can look at that could be used here in the Ukraine and also other places, and then an opportunity to cooperate in the future. But first, I have to say, if you look down at the bottom here, you'll see three people. The one on the left is Bohdan Harlewishin. So founder of the Bohdan Harlewishin Family Fund, also a director of IMD in the 1980s, co-founder of MIM. And the fellow just next to him on the other side is Klaus Schwab. Klaus and Bohdan were also professors at IMI when Klaus founded the World Economic Forum. So there's a little bit of history there that's quite interesting. And so I know there's a lot of MIM alumni here today. You actually have a connection through all of those people in that history, I think. So what we wanted to talk about today was digital business transformation and looking at the examples in healthcare. So where did it come from? About 10 or 12 years ago, John Chambers, who was then the CEO of Cisco, came to IMD and said, you know, we're transforming our business digitally, and it's going quite well. We're doing a lot of good things in that, but our suppliers, our partners, and our customers are struggling to transform, and we don't know why. So John said, look, we're going to give you $10 million. We want you to look at 4,000 companies and find out why they're having problems, what works and what doesn't work. So we started a project on that. We talked to a lot of people, and we essentially came out of that with 3 different areas that we think you need to look at if you're talking about digital transformation. And so the way this works is we're going to look at first how people disrupt. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do incumbents respond? Because normally you'll probably be the incumbent, you won't be the disruptor. Talk about what digital agility is, and that has a very specific mentioning, and also what digital execution is. And then we've got some case studies. I'm going to introduce the case studies to you, but these slides will be on the MIM website. And there's some videos and some further information about these case studies that you can take forward. So we don't go through those today, but you can look at those and look at those with the people in your companies. So the first thing to do, I think, is to think, what is digital business transformation? And what it isn't about technology. So I think that's the first thing that we found. People were focusing on technology. They said, let's do this. Whatever the latest thing is, if it's AI, if it's something else, let's go get that technology. And that's the thing that's going to fix our problem. That's not it. Digital business transformation is organizational change through the use of digital technologies and business models to improve performance. So what it's about is performance. It's not about the technologies. It's not about the latest shiny object. It's about performance. That's what we're trying to improve with digital business transformation. Why do we particularly want to do it? One of the things we found was that only about 5% of digital business transformations succeed. So taking the other way around, 95% of digital business transformations fail. So you're probably more likely to win the lottery than you are to get a successful business transformation in digital areas. So that's what we said. We wanted to look and see why that is. And it starts kind of from this sort of situation. Is you have transformation and you have time. And what happens is you have all these great technologies, and there'll be new ones on the list. So there's virtual reality, IoT, analytics, blockchain, and we'll see new ones. There'll be new ones next week, next month, next year. We'll always see those. But what do you have in your organization? You have inertia, resistance, legacies, and you have fear. And those are the things that are working against there. So what you end up with, digital opportunities, but threats as well. So you've got to figure out how to meld those two things together. Now, what we found is that, the first question was why to transform? And if we were talking about this 15 years ago, and even still to some companies today, you would say, why do I need to digitally transform? But there's fewer companies saying that now. I think almost everyone would see that. And here in Ukraine, I think you've seen very interesting and productive examples of digital transformation. But the next thing is what to transform, and then how to transform. And these are the kind of building blocks you want to put together. So the first thing is what to transform, and the first question to ask is value creation. So what we found is if you look at these 3 elements, cost value, experience value, and platform value. So cost value is competing by offering the customer a lower cost or other economic gain. So that can be, for example, price transparency. It could be some other cost driver. Experience value, and this is what we're all really comfortable with. If we look about, we know our products, we know our customers, we know what they do. The experience is the thing we focus on a lot. So competing by offering a superior experience is something that we do know about. The new thing was platform value. And this is where you get network effects, you get large numbers. So example like the Apple iOS store, these kind of things. This was something that was brand new that we didn't see before. And if you look at some examples of this, so example, if we take Starbucks, for example, is a good example that, there's probably not very much cost value in a Starbucks experience. It's expensive coffee. It probably costs, I don't know how much it costs here, but in Switzerland, it's about 9 Swiss francs, $9 for a cup of coffee, which is amazing. But the experience people love. You get to go in, you use your Wi-Fi, you have a place where there's no pressure. They write your name on the cup. It's all kinds of wonderful things like that. But you don't have the other things. But if you look at something like WeChat in China, for example, it's free. It has definite cost value. Experience value, you almost can't exist in China without one of these super apps. In fact, when I was in Shanghai just before the pandemic, I had taxis that were driving by me because they knew I was not a Chinese person and I wouldn't have the app and I wouldn't be able to pay them. So I couldn't even get a taxi. Platform value, yeah, millions of users, billions of users. And they all come together. And what that's done is that brings together what they call combinatorial disruption. And these guys are really dangerous. They're the ones that are coming after your margins. And those are the people you really have to worry about. So what that means is that there are strategies. First, you have to decide where you are at the moment. So, for example, you might be saying, I'm going to be a disruptor. Okay, I'm going to go and disrupt the market. If you do that, what we found is to be successful, you either need to have cost value, experience value, or platform value, but maybe ideally all three. But you might say, I'm being disrupted, but I still want to occupy my space, in which case you have to have all of those if you want to survive. On the other hand, you may say, I have a defensive strategy. I'm moving out of something, and I'm going to say, I'm going to retreat. I'm getting out very quickly, in which case you focus mainly on experience value. Finally, you might have what they call a harvest strategy. So you could be a travel agency, for example, competing with bookings, but you still want to hang around for a while. Well, what you need then is to have cost value and experience value. So you might customize things for your customers. The next thing is thinking about the view of strategy. And this one, I think, here in Ukraine, I don't think I have to really even show you these slides in a way. So the traditional view of strategy is we're here, we want to be here, so let's make a plan. And let's keep checking the plan. And we've got our 5-year plan, and we're going to check it next year, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after. Let's see what we're doing. But really, in the digital world, it doesn't work that way. And I don't think what's happening here right now works that way either. What you have is, we're here today, and we're going to go one of these places, but we don't actually know which one we're going to. And these things are going to change every day. Every day you're going to wake up. I was talking to someone the other day, and we had a discussion about it at lunch. We had an AI course, and the head of digital there said, okay, well, first thing we have to do is get a prompt engineer. We've got to get some prompt engineers. This is really great, fantastic. That's our next priority. 3 days later, prompt engineering was taken away by AI. AI can now do prompt engineering. You can do it without any prompt engineering skills. So 3 days later, that job in that category was gone. And that's what's happening now. So for that, you need to have multiple strategies. You need to be you have to be agile. That's the main thing. And so what does agility mean in this sense? And it's not really something like a Scrum or something you're thinking about in some of those terms. It's these three things. The first one is hyper-awareness. So it's in a company's ability to detect and monitor changes in the business environment. And so you think about, in most companies, what do you know a lot about? You know a lot about your own company. You might know a lot about your competitors. Do you know about the startups in your sector who are going to disrupt you? Probably not. We did some work with BMW a few years back, and they eventually started a thing called the BMW Startup Garage. And the reason was that at that time, BMW had a research budget of about $5 billion. Lots of money. The startups in their sector had $1 trillion. So they weren't even on the map there. So they needed to find out what those startups were doing. You needed to find out things from different data sources, different places you've never looked at before. The second thing is informed decision making. This is something we found is in companies and large organizations, there tends to be a way we make decisions, but it tends not to be based on data. What it's based on is, this is the way we did it before. This is the consensus in the room. This is what the politics say we should do. This is what our expert says, and we should do that, not on the data. And I think what you want to do is reflect on and think about the examples where you did and did not use data. So we want to encourage you to say, for informed decision making, you should do that. And again, these slides will all be available for you as well too, so don't worry about that. And the final thing is fast execution. And I think, you know, the example we typically put up for this is companies in China like Alibaba. When the pandemic came in, Alibaba managed to have an AI diagnosis system up in 6 weeks in 12 languages. They're super fast at doing things, and that's something you need to be able to do. And it's interesting, when we run programs on this, usually when we talk to younger managers, they're complaining about not being fast enough. The older, more mature managers are saying, yeah, we're fine. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But I think they're seeing a different world. They're watching a different movie. The other thing is, and this is, I think, you know, it's basic, but it's really important, is that you need to have a digital orchestra that you're playing, or digital piano. So you're not playing one chord at a time, one instrument at a time. It plays together. And what we found is the groupings that make the most sense is if you take go-to-market, engagement, operations, and organization, and then put these together. And this is an example for a project that Audi did. And you can see that in this case, they had the Audi e-commerce city, mobility services and offerings, but that was taken as a group of things that were taken together. They looked at the experience value, platform, and cost value and said, you know, what's important? Well, what they were really trying to do is a revised definition of premium to increase the experience value a lot. They were trying to get a connected car and platform value, but cost value really wasn't in there. They weren't really thinking that much about it. And this framework, I think, again, I don't think it's really rocket science that you're looking at here, but it's something that I think you can take and look and say, here, these are the kind of things we need to do. We need to balance those out. So that's the transformation journey. We're saying, why to transform, what to transform, and then how to transform. And I think that if you take this set of things and go through it, I think you'll find you get a much better result. Now, again, what I'm sort of inviting you to do is this is essentially what I've gone up to now is a summary of a 5-day course or a 5-week course that we normally do. We go into a lot more detail with that. We have online materials and things like that. And I think through MIM, we could probably share a lot of that with you. And my invitation to you is to work with us and to participate in that. Now, a couple of the examples that we had, and I won't go through these again in very much detail, but they're digital health. And I think they're things that, you know, in the context of Ukraine right now, they're kind of interesting. One is a Swiss, it's not a startup anymore, it's a tech company called MIM. It's a $2 billion unicorn. Small company in Australia, and then Federated Learning, which one of our faculty has been working on. And what I encourage you to do when you look at these, when you go through the videos and say, can I spot the agility? Can I spot the cost value, experience value, and platform value? That's the thing you want to be looking for. Use those frameworks to see how you judge them. Now, MindMaze, what they are is a digital therapeutics company. They started originally with a product for helping people recover from stroke. And that's expanded into a whole lot of other areas, some of which are very, very interesting. Some, for example, head trauma is an area they work with. They now have digital monitoring, they have chronic care management, peripherals, they work all around the globe. And essentially the problem they were looking at is if you start from the point of view of drugs, they have insufficient efficacy, there's side effects problems. If you look at what I'm calling medical devices, but really that's robotics is what we're looking at here. And the problem is that they're very expensive, but they have poor demonstrated efficacy. They're expensive, cumbersome. You're not going to leave a patient in the room alone with a robot. That's just not going to happen. It's dangerous. And then you say, well, people, that's what we'll do. We use people for that. But the problem is that neurorehabilitation, there's a shortage of therapists. There's not enough around. They're never where you want them. They have to travel. In Australia, where I'm from, we have people traveling 500 kilometers a day to visit patients. So they're not able to do that. So this is what the MindMade has been looking at. And there's a case study on here which is really interesting. So Simon is a British Army guy who was severely injured in an IED explosion. The initial reading from the hospital was that he would be lucky to function with breathing just to communicate. And this is a story with a great ending because he's gone through this and Simon is actually back doing stuff. He's happy, he's positive, he's doing things. And most of the therapy was done through digital therapeutics, and he's done it on his own. And if you look at this, the thing that you'll see through the whole video is he's smiling. He's happy. And I think it's really good. And so in terms of this kind of thing, it's really fantastic. We also have a case where they're working with a children's hospital in Sydney at Westmead. And the people there, again, head trauma, mainly through accidents, motor vehicle accidents, and that sort of thing. But the interesting thing that I found out of this one was they're having great success with people who are nonverbal, which are generally very difficult patients, and people with learning disabilities. And those people are having great results. And this is something that even the therapist struggles with there. So you can see kind of examples in this videos. Andrew is the therapist there, and he's put some videos on there. You can see about the people, what they've done. Another approach to this is a small Australian company called TheraTrack. It's an app. It goes onto an iPhone or an Android phone. And essentially what they were looking at is the problem that therapy teams are fragmented in every place. Here in Australia, in Europe, everywhere else. You have psychologists, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, speech therapists. Lots of things are done with paper. They're lost. You don't see them. And then you have the GP, the parents, everyone else involved in that. So what they came up with was a very simple app that has no therapist, no worry. Okay, so if your therapist isn't there, you can still do your therapy. Direct participant, so the participant takes control of what they're doing. They download programs, and what's interesting here is other therapists will then start to put content on. Now you start to get platform values. They'll say, okay, I've got some great exercises, I can put those on there as well. And it takes you into a realm where you have a very difficult environment where people can do something very productively, very cheaply. Again, there's some videos on there you can see for some examples. And then the final one, again, I won't say too much about this. Jose Paramoyo is one of our newer professors, and he's been working on federated learning. Essentially what that is taking information from the cloud, from other places, bringing it up and letting the system learn from it. It has a lot of interesting advantages, and he's done a very nice video on there that you can see. You can learn about that as well. So that's basically what I wanted to go through and tell you about. I'm going to end there, but I just wanted to have a small personal reflection. In about 10 days' time, I'm going to be on what's called the Kokoda Trek in Papua New Guinea. Why is it interesting? Well, it's an 8-day trek that goes 120 kilometers in the rain and the mud with mosquitoes and malaria. And you'd say, well, why would anybody go there? Well, what it happens to be, it's a trail that was made famous in Australia because that was the first place that Australia confronted the Japanese Empire. They confronted them, they slowed them down, they turned them around, and they defeated them. And what I'm really looking forward is coming back to Ukraine to walk on your Kokoda Trail in a couple of years' time. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you. Yep. As far as I could gather, we don't have a second speaker. Something happened in California. And therefore, we have a few minutes to reflect on what you've said. And the major reflect, actually, you were speaking about digitalization and all these trends, which typically justified by advantages in medical, in healthcare, in making disabled people start talking, and it's going on in various directions in various fields. At least it's a technology which currently is being discussed very widely. And there is a matter of regulation, starting with complaints of Elon Musk that he couldn't get the FDI approval for starting experimenting with the people and ending with some other things. To what extent, in your opinion, this all technology, all this field, all this stream need to be regulated? And what kind of regulations could be implied? Should rely on business-owned type of regulations, or should impose something different? Because different countries at the moment, different regions, demonstrate absolutely different approaches. Yeah. We have European Union with one rather strict approach, with a lot of cases. We have the US, which try to protect or try to agree in this. We have China, which actually using this not only for healthcare. Yeah. And your opinion would be?
So I think a personal opinion of that is, I think one of the things that you observe is that in the last few years particularly, people have tended to politicize their beliefs in healthcare. So people look and say, well, I believe something, and therefore I'm going to look at this, rather than saying, how efficacious is it? How does it work? What's the data? What value does it create? Does it make me more agile? I think they ask the wrong questions. I think that's one of the problems. I think that the other side of healthcare is messy. It's probably, next to education, it's probably one of the messiest industries around.
Good compliment to education.
Yeah, I mean, you have lots of different players. Again, one of the if you talk to the TheraTrack people, one of the problems they have is the therapists love their product, and if they go to a therapist, they say, I want it. The problem is the therapist doesn't pay for it, doesn't make the decision, doesn't buy it, doesn't mandate its use. It's usually a business manager. The business managers, at least in Australia, tend not to have a medical background. They have a business background. And so one of the things they found that they had to do was to learn how to sell to people who were not experts. And I think that was really important. And I think that's probably one of the things that the regulatory people need to work on a lot is how do they make the system have less friction in the system so that people can communicate and talk across different lines who particularly don't understand each other. I think that's something that's really important.
Well, we have people in the audience from the healthcare. I met several, so and it's nice to hear that it's some kind of a mess, which brings me to another question, also related to digital technology. There are a lot of startups, there are a lot of activities, there are a lot of waves of raising that or another field, in particular in healthcare, in one of the examples, but we had this fintech, we have another fields where startups were quite active. Disruption, you mentioned during this section. From one side. From the other side, we have big behemoth, big company that dominates the sphere at the moment, and they look like ready to dominate everything in the scene. What's your opinion, who in this, let's say, competition, who will win, and how the future landscape, business landscape that is related to this particular business field or business sphere will look like. I understand a hard question. We missed Marina Gorbis from the US. She should provide us a template how to think about this. So you are the one who would answer.
Well, it's interesting. First time I met Marina was 2008, and we brought a bunch of MBA students to Stanford to meet with her. And she said, look, I'm going to tell you about something that's new you've never heard about before. It's called Twitter. And everybody in the room looked around. They said, what's that? And so she said, yeah, this is really going to be big. You're going to really be impressed with this. She put it in. Everybody logged on. They got a Twitter account. They did a tweet and were wholly unimpressed. And so all the executives saying, this is going nowhere. I finished the class, I went in, I called my kids back in Australia and I said, have you ever heard about this? I just got a Twitter account. And they said, Dad, you've just done the first cool thing in your life. Because they said, you know, you've actually done something that is going to succeed. They saw it at that time. Marina saw it. But the executives in the room absolutely did not.
Okay, that's a great answer. Thank you very much. Okay. Because, you know, that's not us who will decide the future.
Thank you.
That's a good answer. Thank you very much.